Well, there was only one way, really, to summarise the presidential debate.
Wants to get away with, get rid of the ability of Medicare for the ability for us to be able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Yep, that's the moment Joe Biden lost the presidency. Joining us now is commentator and host of the new podcast, Brad versus Everyone, Brad Polumbo. Brad, thanks for joining us. I like the name of your new podcast, by the way, Brad versus Everyone. But on Biden, it's over, isn't it? I mean, there's even talk there'll be a family meeting at Camp David to discuss his future. He can't go on, surely.
No, Joe Biden's brain is officially cooked. We just saw his last few functioning brain cells melt into pudding in real time. It's sad stuff. And honestly, it happens to all of us eventually. There's nothing at all inherently shameful about aging, but the problem is clinging on to power far past. I mean, most people wouldn't trust this guy to babysit their kid, let alone run their company or run our country. And what's concerning to me is that it's actually a matter of national security, and not just national security, but of the fate of human civilization, right? This is the guy with the nuclear codes, and he can barely string together a sentence, yet at any moment he could have to decide the fate of human civilization. I mean, that's a pretty frightening prospect. All politics and partisanship aside, he's clearly not up for the job. But the question is, will he ever actually give it up?
Oh, that was going to be my next question. How do you see this playing out, Brad? Would he actually go before November? And if so, who is there to replace him?
Well, look, I hope so, for the good of our country, but I'm not optimistic. I actually think he will cling to power. I think the only person who could maybe convince him is Jill Biden. But even then, look, Joe Biden has wanted to be president his entire life. He's got a little bit of a God complex. He thinks he's the only person who can beat Trump and save our country from Trump. And I don't think he's going to give up his nomination and his grip on power. And I don't really think they can replace him without his consent. He would have to agree to step down. But then you have the problem of replace him with whom? Because when they picked Joe Biden's vice president, they went for identity politics and how many diversity boxes they could check off with Kamala Harris, who is a black woman, yes, but is a terrible politician who's never won an election outside of a deep, deep Democratic state in California. So they would naturally have to go to the VP, but she would almost certainly lose. She's incredibly unpopular. But if they were to skip over her and go to someone else, their own base would call them racist, sexist, and everything else under the sun. So they've got a real can of worms there if they even were to try to replace Joe Biden at this point.
No, Brad, I think you're missing the game here, because they can tick those diversity boxes if they skip over Kamala Harris to Michelle Obama.
She doesn't want it. She's said her whole life she hates politics. She doesn't want to do it. I don't think that I don't think she has any interest in going back into there. And she's one of those figures that's so popular with the American public. But if she actually got into the political realm herself, that would quickly change. I mean, would she do much better than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden? I think yes, but I don't think it's going to happen, guys. I just really don't. My money's against it.
All right, looks like he's going back round to try and go for another term, which is extraordinary. I've got to ask you, Brad, what do you make of Jill Biden? I mean, she's really rallying behind her husband here, but is she just enabling a man who is clearly very unwell? I'm surprised that she would be pushing him to do this.
Yeah, at this point, Jill Biden is enabling elder abuse of her own husband, and that's really hard to countenance. It's really hard to stomach why somebody would do that. Part of loving someone, and I do believe they love each other, they're not like a fake relationship like Hillary and Bill Clinton, right? Is telling them the truth and holding them accountable and being real with them. And she's got to tell him, Joe, look, it's time to give it up. We probably never should have even run for this first term, but we did. You can lie to him, tell him what a success it was, even though it really wasn't. But you got to be honest with people when you love them. But instead, she's enabling his own mistreatment and abuse at this point. And I want to know who's been running our country this last few years, because it's clearly not this guy. And the American people have a right to know. Is it Jill Biden? Is it Kamala Harris? Because nobody voted for them.
And Brad, what do you say about the media in the US who have, for the past 4 years, defended Joe Biden and told everybody that you're imagining his dementia, he's brilliant, he's sharp, he's right on his game? Well, now clearly the whole world has seen that's been a complete lie. Where do the media stand on this, and where do they go from here?
Well, this saga has lit their last vestiges of credibility into absolute flames because they've been gaslighting us. Look, the best example of this is MSNBC and their two hosts, Joe and Mika. Just a couple weeks ago, we're telling everybody President Biden is as sharp as he's ever been. We've been meeting with him. He is sharp as a tack. It's all right-wing misinformation and cheap fakes is what they called real videos of Joe Biden looking old and confused. And now this week they've been saying, all right, he's got to go. We got to switch him out. He's too old. It's like, okay, were you lying then or were you just delusional? Either way, I mean, mainstream media, left of center media in the US it's burning through its last remaining shreds of credibility at this point because they've totally debased themselves to lie and gaslight the public about Joe Biden's decline. It's always been there for us all to see, and now we've seen it, and we know they were lying.
And speaking of delusional, Brad, I want to ask you about this tweet from Joe Biden right after the debate. It was almost as bizarre as the debate itself. He tweeted, "I don't know what you did last night, but I spent 90 minutes debating a guy with the morals of an alley cat." Mate, you lost the debate. What the heck is he thinking?
What does an alley cat have to do with being immoral? I mean, a cat that lives outside, that doesn't have a home, that lives in an alley. What about that is immoral exactly? I mean, it's not a great way to reassure the public, oh, guys, I'm not old. I'm totally young and fit for office. When you start babbling and saying random, incoherent, old-timey phrases, like that's kind of what grandpas start to do when it's time for them to retire and take a step back in life. And it's cute and endearing in that context, but it's not cute and it's not endearing when it's the president of the United States with the nuclear codes who's saying random things. And I want to know where are the animal rights activists on this one to call out the president for his slander of alley cats, who I don't think have done anything wrong. They're just down on their luck, okay? They're not immoral. And it's very offensive that he would attack the cat community in this way. No, all joking aside, it's like, really? That's the best line you could come up with? It doesn't even make sense.
All the cats watching are very grateful for your support, Brad. Just quickly, with Biden continuing in the campaign, if he goes right through to the election, does this not mean that the Democrats are going to have to go even harder against Trump? What about the possibility of him receiving a jail sentence? That might be the only way they could stop him.
They're going to double down on the lawfare. The media is going to continue to go after Trump, and they're going to try to distract from Biden's failings. You can expect more claims that it's all misinformation, but honestly, he's going to have to step before the public again at some point. There's really no escaping this. So they can try to distract from it as much as they want, but the American people are going to see that Biden's not up for the job. And if they put him up anyway, I do think Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States.
Well, it's certainly going to be a fascinating few months ahead. Brad Polumbo, thank you so much for joining us tonight.